Hello, hello. This is Kryptonite Dragon with the PodStation on Trophies on PSN. Hello, Dante.
Hello, I'm back again for
Welcome to the
another
show.
week.
I should come in and do your voice, and you should do mine.
Yeah, I wondered
Can
what
we
was
do that?
going on then. I was just like waiting for you to cue me in or something.
I was thinking about it, but I don't think I can. I don't think I could do it. I need a lighter to click.
Yeah, and a British accent would be a good start.
Yeah, that might help. You don't think the lighter would just do it? They would think it was me.
No, you definitely would have to have a British accent. Go on, give the British accent a shot now and try it.
Try it.
Yeah, try it.
Well, how are you going to do an American? Are you going to do an American? That's only fair.
I guess. That depends on what type of American you want.
Depends on what type of American.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You fancy a spot of tea?
No, that's not British. That's like proper tough talk. That's like, I'm pretty certain high classes of American society speak like you just spoke.
No, isn't the impression that we're all cowboys? Aren't we all like John Wayne over here and like...
No.
No.
No, we're not that stupid.
We all have cattle in our backyard?
No, not unless your name's Ted Turner.
No. Okay.
Anyway.
Well, hey, misconceptions and all that.
Yeah.
Gotta believe what you see on television. Anyway, welcome. So, site roundup. What can I say about the site? A lot of things have been changing. The front end, we're still working on it. Got a little tweak here and there to do. Behind the scenes, we're working on putting a lot of information in. You're going to start seeing a lot of info popping up.
Oh, yes.
And what we have in mind, Dante, is pretty big, pretty ambitious about putting in all the information about games, publishers, developers, box art, allowing for ratings, release dates, videos, all kinds of things, all kinds of pages, all kind of info related to trophies, stats across the site from what members have what percentage of members have what.
Yeah.
All kinds of things.
The cool thing about it is it will actually, in some, I imagine people are listening to this going, oh, it should just be like Wikipedia. Well, no, it won't be, because it'll be a functional Wikipedia. There'll actually be genuinely useful information, and it'll be relatable to what you actually do and play on the site. So, it's taking, I guess, an idea and really expanding and building on it. And you're right, it is going to take a lot of hard work, but I'm definitely keen to see that actually implemented. I think that's a really cool idea that I think, people don't always feel that they necessarily need it, but to be honest with you, I think it's a great resource. There's many people that I talk to about games and stuff, and they'll recognise the title of a game, but they won't have any clue about the history behind it, the publishers, the developers, what other projects are going on. I could talk to somebody, for example, about Quantic Dreams, and then they may only be aware of, say, Heavy Rain, and have no idea about the upcoming Beyond Two Souls game, or the fact that they're working on a PS4 game, or that they've done previous games in the past. So that kind of resource is definitely going to help with people in the community being able to talk about some of the historical aspects as well, which will be cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're a site where we've got some very unique content created by members, and that's absolutely fantastic. But at the same time, we need to have some of that basic information that people might go searching for. So if we put the two together, we'll be a powerhouse. I can't stress enough how this will boost the SEO, search engine optimization. We the more pages we have with keywords of games and stuff, that just helps us out. And then, we want people to be able to find us. Whether they're looking for that kind of information or looking for guide-specific information, it'd be nice that they get pointed to us from either one of those avenues, regardless of the end result of what they're trying to get in information. It helps them find us, and that's a good start. And then, obviously these are the kind of things that bring us up to, serious levels of, information and exposure. And that's something that we've been lacking, and as I've said before, that I've kind of let us down in that regard. So, if we go powerhouse in the other direction, then we'll know. We'll show everyone that we can be successful with member numbers.
Mhm.
Something that we need to step up on.
Yeah.
So.
And we're not just doing it on the cheap either, in terms of that we are actually going to provide an experience for members across the board. So we're not just trying to chalk up the numbers through numerous, clicks and things. We do genuinely want members to come in and get involved. So the more content we offer, the better the community is going to be as a whole.
Yeah, and we've got a big task on our hand. We're gonna need help from the staff as well, putting some of this info in. It's not gonna be a small chore, but it's also, if we all pitch in, it shouldn't be that big of a task. Um, but the reward, the payoff down the road will just be huge. So
Absolutely. Looking
looking
forward
forward.
to
Yeah, I was about to say that exact thing.
it.
Looking forward to it.
It's a parrot in the room.
Yeah.
Any other site news for us?
So
Besides
now,
that awesome stuff?
so now, if you have a parrot, does it speak in a British accent when it repeats you?
No, probably speak pirate or something. Aha! Something
Arr.
like
Then you would know it's a pirate bird instead of just a regular bird, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, give us a game of the week.
Yes, PSN pick of the week. We were struggling a bit this week because, to be honest with you, the release schedule's actually been pretty poor for both PlayStation Store updates. There hasn't really been much for the last 2 weeks that I would probably say that's worth picking up. So it got me thinking about some of the games that I have played recently, and it got me thinking about a rather unique one that I'm pretty certain that most people may not be aware of, that isn't a game as such, but it's certainly worth picking up just for personal interest, really. A few years ago, Create Studios released a game called Test Yourself, and you could buy DLC packs, and the idea behind it is it would build up a personality profile by answering questions, solving logic puzzles and stuff like that. Well, they've recently released another one called Psych Yourself, which is basically psychological testing, and so you can complete a bunch of tests within the game itself, and it presents images, audio, puzzles and things like that you sort of have to solve on the fly and distinguish people's body language and that kind of thing, and it helps build a site profile for yourself, which you can then share with other people across PSN, and you can also ask them to do a test and then compare the results between you and your PSN friends.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's a really nifty idea, to be honest with you, because you don't really get these types of games come along that often, and even on other platforms you don't. And it's intriguing that something as simple as a video game can provide quite an accurate psychological test on your psychology. So if you have an interest in those kinds of things, I would say definitely pick up Psych Yourself. It's got trophies in there, so there is an added bonus for taking part in it. But yeah, it's just an intriguing little thing that I would say is worth people's investment just out of pure curiosity. As I say, it's not something you'd find on a lot of other platforms where you can actually buy a piece of software that then psychologically evaluates you by challenging you to do logic puzzles and answer questions and body language and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's a very unique title. I would highly recommend it. Create Studios are doing great work with that, and to be honest with you, I would highly recommend it. It's about £5.49 on the UK PSN store. As far as I know, it is available in other regions, but I'm not quite sure about the cost on that. But yeah, I'd certainly recommend people go and check it out, just for its quirkiness, I guess.
Yeah. I've played all those other ones, the Test Yourself Psychology, earlier ones that came out about a
Yeah,
year
because
ago.
the Test Yourself ones did like IQ and chemistry
Yeah,
and all that kinds of stuff.
hand-eye coordination, that kind of thing.
Yeah. It didn't really focus too much on psychology, whereas this one is, all about the psychological aspect of it, and they really have made a premium product with that, and as a result, it's actually proved to be pretty good. There are some tweaks I have to say that would be quite nice. For example, if you do a psychological test, that you were able to, I don't know, say maybe Facebook or tweet your psychological thing, or at least save a copy of your evaluation that you could then print off or something like that, just out of pure curiosity. It seems that while they've done a great job in the game itself, providing the results, they haven't quite done enough to provide you the results and allow you to keep them, to keep your curiosity going. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, with a bit more tweaking, it could have been a really fantastic thing, but I'd still recommend it anyway, just as I say, for pure quirkiness value.
Cool. We have to give that a
Psych
shot.
yourself by Create Studios, PSN store, pick it up.
And then we can do like psych testing.
Yeah.
Can order psych testing for the staff.
We'd all be mad. Psychologically insane.
All these people going, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Cool.
Should do that for a poll. Guess which one of us is a psycho serial killer.
Match the psychological profile with the PSN ID.
Yeah. Who would your money be on? You're not going to say, are you? You're not going to let us know who you think is the serial killer.
And I wonder if there's something to be said about the kind of games that a person plays that, would match up with a certain profile. Guess it's how in-depth it is, right?
Yeah, I think with these, it's hard as well because I'll be honest with you, I can't say I'm an expert in psychology and stuff, but as far as my understanding of a lot of psychology is, you can prove things with chemical tests and all this other stuff, brain scans and all that, but it's still interpretive. Do you know what I mean? So, while one person could, interpret someone's brain scan to be an evil, another person can interpret it to say, well, actually, they're actually pretty good. So I don't know, but it's a curious thing to see that there are studios out there that are willing to give the possibility of exploring issues like psychology and logic and IQ and that through games medium, and games are a great way to do that, to be honest.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, definitely intriguing. So, you covered site roundup stuff, but we didn't go into it too much, but there was a GTA 4 event last night, Community Gaming Night. Do you want to know more about that?
We do.
Aye, okay. Well, as you know, we sort of do Community Game Nights every couple of weeks now. If you're listening to the PodStation for the first time, keep your eyes open, make sure that you do sign up for them. They are great, and you do have a say on what we actually play. But last night we did GTA 4. We actually had quite a lot of people turn up. GTA Man was sort of bringing us and organising a lot of it and stuff. So we did quite a few fun things. We did ice cream truck races.
Oh, cool.
Which is pretty cool. So we started off doing some races and things, and we had a lot of fun with that. I know Squill and GTA Man captured a lot of video, which we'll try and snag for the YouTube channel, so people can check that out. But we had a good laugh with that, to the point of where Squill was flipping his vans and cars on lampposts somehow, magically. It's weird. So I drive past him, and the next thing you know, it's like Squill's managed to flip his van by clipping a curb or something. But we had a lot of there was some steady competition in there as well when GTA Man wasn't using his grenades to blow everybody up. But yeah, so yeah, we started off with some races. We did a mixture of fun races with different types of vehicles. We did some GTA races, and then we went and did some cops and crooks, which didn't last very long because we were able to nail each other pretty quickly on that. And we did some turf wars, which was pretty fun. Although I got to admit, for about 10 minutes I did get lost. I couldn't find anyone on my team. As miles away. So it took me about 5-10 minutes to get back to where they were, and by the time I got back, the match was over. So sadly, that was my participation in it. But we also did a team deathmatch as well, where we all took on GTA Man on his own. So it was like 10 of us versus one of him.
You guys got your butt handed to you.
Yep. How did you guess?
I can just imagine. He's, he lives and breathes that game. I think when the next one comes out, when we see GTA 5, we probably will not see GTA men ever again.
Well, at least not for a good 6 months anyway. We're like trying to ring him on Skype or something, and all you hear is playing GTA.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I mean, I think it's safe to say that everybody had a fun night. GTA is probably one of those games that fortunately enough is big enough for you to be able to do all kinds of things. It makes it a great community night. Kind of looking forward to what the multiplayer offering on GTA 5 is going to be, because obviously with the new game coming out, it's going to make community game nights a hell of a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
With the new game. Overall it was great success. A lot of people turned up. A lot of people had fun. And obviously we've got to wait to find out what the next one is. But as I say, we'll try and get a lot of the videos that people captured on their PVR. Sadly, we weren't able to live stream it because there were some technical issues. But we're going to, as far as I understand it, the events team are looking into that a bit more further as well. So there's a good possibility that we may be able to actually live stream community events as well. So those that don't necessarily have the game to get involved with a community game night will still be able to participate, even if it's just watching and chatting to people.
Watching you endlessly
through the
run
live
around.
stream, yeah.
Watching you endlessly run around on the far side of the map trying to find everybody.
Yeah. Or watching GTA Man massacre
Just slaughter
10
everyone.
against one team, yeah. But yeah, I think, progressing it to live stream is going to be an interesting way of expanding the events as well. So it would be pretty cool to see where that goes with it as well. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for that. But as I say, we'll get the videos up and hopefully people can see what good laugh we had and come join us for the next one.
Cool. That's cool that there's a game that's so large that you can get lost, but then it's so versatile that you can have like helicopter wars and car races and still do the shootouts and stuff like that in there. That's kind of neat. There's few games that are like that.
RPGs.
Yeah, there's few games. There's few games that are like that if you think about it. Multiplayer.
I don't know. I don't think you can do that in Saints Row, can you?
I don't think so.
No. I didn't even think... probably Red Dead Redemption's probably about the only other one where you can just mess about.
Yeah.
I can't really think of any sort of massive open world games like that you can just mess about on.
With
Perhaps
multiplayer.
Burnout.
Huh.
Burnout, maybe. Need for Speed Most Wanted, but it's very, very few and far between.
Well, Burnout's stuck to just vehicles, so...
Yeah, and you can't shoot people, so... But you know what I mean, though, in terms of, when you get a massive open world and you just want to mess about and do silly stuff in it or whatever.
Yeah. Those are the best for large multiplayer groups.
Yeah.
So, cool.
I think that's why I'm kind of glad that the PS3 is starting to see more MMOs with things like Defiance and DC Universe, because you can do those kinds of things in those environments. So, it'd just be nice to see more sort of open world games that are A, pretty good quality to play on your own, but B, also have quite a substantial multiplayer offering, like GTA 4 has in some respect. Bring it on. You heard it here first. Saints Row 4, make sure you're listening, because you could definitely do with the feedback and putting something like that in place. If not, I ain't buying. So, topic this week.
Well, we decided we were going to talk about, just gaming. The culture of video games, what's wrong with video gaming, what's wrong with the culture, some of the challenges, that kind of thing. So,
Far away.
based on what
You're,
you've said so far, one of the first things I want to talk about, and this relates to the PS4 coming out, though, is just social media and the use of social media, some of the lack of it. The functionality that could be there, that could be forced upon a game and upon gamers. What that means for the basically gaming worldwide, because obviously if you have social media, you have Facebook that has like a billion people on it.
and then some, yeah.
And then let's not forget that gaming is not just the PS3. We have Facebook has its own versions of games. Phones have their own versions of games. So let's talk about that. First and foremost, what do you see as one of the biggest problems with gaming today?
Um, where to start? Well, I don't think it's any of the stuff that you've just mentioned with social media and stuff. I think, if anything, that actually helps the appeal of gaming across the board. I think my biggest problem with the games industry and games in general at the moment is the inability of the core community to actually be open-minded. There are a number of great games that sort of get swept under the carpet, and that really annoys me. Something chronic, because people won't give them a try because they're not your usual cookie cutter Call of Duty type of games, and what we've seen could set a dangerous precedent going forward, where we will see less AAA games in favour of sequels and franchises that will constantly sell, and that would be a sad time for the rest of us. Just because 16 million people buy Call of Duty every year, they shouldn't forget about the couple of million that buy the smaller, not well known AAA titles. And I think that is probably my biggest gripe with the industry as a whole. And I'm not saying people who buy Call of Duty completely ignore the games, but I just wish people that did were more open-minded. Fair enough, if you love Call of Duty, you're the biggest fan in the world, by all means buy it, play it, spend some time with it, but then don't forget there are other games out there that could give you a positive experience. I mean, I've seen it over the years since I initially got my PS3. How many people have changed their, gaming habits from, being open-minded to then going onto the Call of Duty craze and jumping on the bandwagon, and then suddenly weaning themselves off and finding that they're having more fun again because there's that much variety. And I think, the success of Call of Duty and other games in that sort of vein, can be considered great for the industry from a fiscal point of view, but at the same time, it's cutting out people's desire to go and try some variety, and that really saddens me.
So is it a result of these companies being such big powerhouses with the money that they're throwing around for advertising and?
I don't know, to be honest with you, because it could be a number of things, and I don't really want to digress into it, but I've got to be honest with you. We're still really in the infancy of learning more about video game addiction, and I wonder how much of the time investment in Call of Duty is that people actually really like the game, and how much of it is them addicted to the risk-reward system and the serotonin in the brain. There needs to certainly be a lot more research into that.
Well, I think you're seeing
statements about
more now with prestige and involvement with different clans and in competitive, sport gaming. You've got a lot more of just those kind of things that are pulling people in all different directions. So now it's not just pop in Call of Duty, play a little bit of multiplayer. Maybe there's a trophy or two associated with it. Now it's a serious time investment. You want to beat the zombie levels, you got to coordinate with, 3 other people. You want to, get to the max prestige, you've got to play hundreds and hundreds of hours. So, I don't know. They're obviously trying to do all that stuff to keep people's attention to it for the long term. But I think you're right. There's a certain number of gamers that are just, they won't experience other types of games. I've personally tried with friends that, are Call of Duty fanatics and things like that, where I say, hey, I'll trade you a disc or something here. Let's borrow this for a while, let's try it, see what you like.
Yeah.
Um,
And we've talked about this before, with studios closing down and stuff. And, even with Square Enix have been talking about the sales numbers for Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider's a fantastic game, although the multiplayer's a bit weak, sort of. But the thing is, for many people, it's Game of the Year contender. It's in the top 10 of most sales charts across the world, and it's only sold about 3.5 million copies worldwide to date. And Square Enix are saying, well, why did we invest so much money in producing the reboot? Because they were expecting it to sell 5 million plus.
Yeah.
And you have to sort of ask, if the game is of the highest quality, what more can the publisher do to actually get people to play the game? Because I don't think it's the fact that, it's another Tomb Raider game, or people remember how bad some of the previous Tomb Raider games that have put off people's sales. I think it's because people are just like, oh, I don't want to invest the time. I've got better gaming Call of Duty, so I don't even want to entertain the idea of playing another game.
Yeah.
I mean, I've even seen people that I know that have bought systems just purely for the Call of Duty experience, and I just think to myself, why? You've paid $300 for the system, then you pay $60 every year for the game, and obviously whatever additional costs from the DLC, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't do that, because obviously that's up to them what they do with their money. I can't make that decision for them, but at the same time, I really wish people would just expand their horizons a bit more.
Well, I mean, we're in a time period too where even with movies, we're in sequelville. It used to, if you look back, it used to not be that way with games, for the most part. It was something original and new all the time, and now it's
Well, back in PS1, back in PS1 and PS2, I mean, okay, Final Fantasy VII, the Final Fantasy series were essentially all sequels in some way, shape or form, but, we got spoiled as gamers, from the range of new IPs and new things that came out, and it just seems like now, we're getting new IPs and sequels to new IPs, and people just don't seem to genuinely be bothered, because they'd rather spend 100 hours a week shooting things.
Well, I guess that relates to, do gamers, is it the experience, is it the kind of action, or I mean, is there some expectation of comfort with the same kind of game, same kind of character? Because that's the other thing you've got, like, you go back in history, characters weren't really developed, and now if you're playing version 4 and 5 of a game, it's pretty much the same kind of story, because they take the same engine and everything typically, and they build, the gameplay and everything around it, which makes it the same. You're either pulling a trigger or throwing C4 or whatever. It's, that doesn't change.
Yeah. But I mean, I get what you're saying there, but I mean, I will say, there are. I don't want to sort of dismiss all sequels though, because, in some respect, Naughty Dog's success is because they've been able to not only tweak and improve the gameplay each game, but they've also been able to really put the core focus on the characters and the game itself, the core characters in the story. So, each Uncharted that you buy, yes, you're essentially doing the same thing. You're shooting bad guys and stuff, but you don't care, because, you get lost in the story. And, from Naughty Dog's perspective, that's a great way to pursue it forward. should they make any more Uncharted games? And Quantic Dreams have sort of cottoned on to that a little bit, and they've been pushing forward. It doesn't the gameplay is not the most necessarily important factor. Um, when you're trying to present, emotional, engaging characters in a complex, thought-provoking story that really should be pushing the medium forward, because let's be honest, if you want to tweak the gameplay in most genres, it was sort of maxed out at that point until a new control method comes out, really.
Hmm.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of how much further can you push the gameplay? A first-person shooter now these days is always going to have L1 to aim, R1 to shoot, and you're always going to be shooting bad guys. I mean, how can you progress that gameplay much further than beyond that for a first-person shooter?
Yeah, I don't know. It's
That's why I'm always curious to hear, Hideo Kojima and some of the other developers that have been around for a good 10, 15 years in the current console life cycles, as they were more popular than they have been in the past. But I'm always curious when they start talking about, I would like to make a story-driven first-person shooter, and I think, how interesting would it be to see how far they could push it, or would they get stuck with the same old must shoot bad guy, lots of them mentality?
well, I've always maintained that, like, if you put too much story into, I mean, you're going to turn off, those that like shooters. And then the other thing you got to consider is, that multiplayer element. It always comes down to that. You can't really stick a story into the multiplayer, can you? Because
I don't know. I mean,
when
we
it comes
talked
down
about
to
this
it, when we're going
when
to
we
play online with any kind of shooter, we're just going to go revert to that base, just trying to shoot and kill each other. It's not going to be like, oh, what's the story here?
if you remember when we did the show about first-person shooters, the PodStation, we actually explored that, and we came up with some pretty unique and far-out ideas of how they could do that. So it's not impossible. It's just whether or not people are willing to take the risk. And let's be honest, Activision aren't going to take the risk with it. And
Well, no, they slap Call of Duty name on something, and it's a moneymaker right there.
Yeah. So
And a reboot costs, if they totally redo the story and redo, put new characters in, that kind of stuff's where what takes money for development, and you know, yeah, I wouldn't expect that they're going to stop, and I wouldn't expect that they're going to change their format too much.
But as I say, I don't necessarily want to blame, Call of Duty, because there are obviously other first-person shooter
Well, and
games
you
that
can't blame them. They're in existence to make money. And what would you do if you're a studio head and they say, well, it's a successful formula. We can put one out every year. We can make big bucks.
Yeah, but I do think gamers need to question at what cost that involves, because it's not just the cost of your $60.
Well, I mean, do you think
entry?
Is there a division
out of the studios and developers that we lose as a result? Because
is there a division there though? I mean, you're asking people. I mean, if their stripes are, I'm just a first-person shooter Call of Duty fan, and that's all I play. What percentage of gamers is that? Is that the majority of people that buy Call of Duty? Is that are a majority of them going to be stuck playing it most of the time, and that's where you get 80% of their gaming's going to be in, and they're not really going to be pushing money towards other things anyway? Or are the trophy hunters, are they the ones that spend money on a variety of different games? That's open for debate, because those might not be customers for the normal gaming company anyway.
No.
It really might not be. I personally know friends that have never played anything else but Call of Duty. I mean, literally to the point where, like, I've lent them, Resistance and stuff like that, like, hey, this is a great shooter. It's okay. I played it a little bit, and you're just like, well, it's a shooter.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but, I can get online here, and, like, okay. Whatever the difference is, people have this affinity for modern combat shooters. So,
but yeah, that's where I feel, where the games industry is going wrong slightly, because I think, Square Enix selling 3.5 million copies of the Tomb Raider reboot is actually quite successful.
Mm-hmm.
And, it gives them foundations to build on. But, if more people ain't going to buy it, even though it's done successful, it's been fairly successful. If they're already thinking about chopping it because, it's not going to get up to the sales numbers that we'd expect, then, I've got to be honest to you, people that complain about, um, yearly sequels and so on really need to do more to try and encourage the other fellow gamers who buy these yearly sequels to also take the plunge into other things as well.
So let me ask you this: What franchise has the what franchise does their sequels the best?
I would probably say Assassin's Creed. And I don't just say that as a fan. I mean, every Assassin's Creed game is an improvement upon itself.
Okay.
You can
Changes
go.
changes the way the story goes and
Yeah,
the
I mean,
gameplay.
the endings of Assassin's Creed are so far stretched that you never really know what you're going to get in the next game. So, but no, it's the fact that they're able to create whole new historical areas. I know some people have complained about the fact that they are focusing on certain time periods, but the fact they're able to build these things. Um, and each one feels, the cities themselves that you play in each time you play an Assassin's Creed feel like a character of themselves. And so, in terms of yearly franchises, that and it doesn't just stop there. The main story or the environments that you play in, they do try and tweak the combat side of things. Um, they do try to add new features that don't always work, like we found with the tower defense type mini game in Revelations. But at least they're attempting to take risks with it. And Assassin's Creed 3, for example, the new DLC with that gives you mystical powers and alternative futures with the game. And so Ubisoft are quite good at taking risks with the series and not afraid to do that without alienating their base. But yeah, Assassin's Creed as a franchise is probably about the only one that continues to improve on a yearly basis because, you know, take the Call of Duty for example. I think it's well known that they're pretty much using the same engine that they used on COD 4, with a few tweaks and here and there every other year. It's always been the same graphics engine, and it becomes apparent when you look at some of the way that levels are set out. They may create, I don't know, about 8 or 9 brand new levels, but a majority of the assets that populate those levels are stuff that's left over from the previous games. So they're not really doing that much to innovate with the Call of Duty side of things, and that's why I would say that the better yearly franchise that continues to improve is probably Assassin's Creed, and it shows in the sales numbers as well. I mean, there's a reason 10, 12 million people go out and buy Assassin's Creed every year because it's an improvement on the previous year, and so they feel they get value for money out of it.
Hmm. Now, what about the GTA franchise?
Yeah, but it's not yearly though.
No, it's not yearly, but there's sequels and stuff like that. They've changed the storyline quite a lot too.
Yeah, well, see, I don't think GTA 4 was that much of a step up, if I'm honest. I think Rockstar, and I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, but I think Rockstar was rather lazy with GTA 4.
I really liked the story in GTA 4. I really got into the whole idea of it, and
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is I'm not questioning the story. There were a few tweaks, like the mobile phone system and stuff, that added to it. But essentially, there wasn't that sense of amazement sitting down with GTA 4 as it was sitting down with GTA 3.
hmm.
That there's so much more they could have done with GTA 4 and just didn't.
Okay, well,
So my expectations are canned on that, but I am looking forward to. I'm not going to lie, I am looking forward to GTA 5. But I just hope that Rockstar have learned a lesson in the fact that need to make sure that GTA 5 always feels fresh every time you boot it up, and doesn't feel like it gets a bit repetitive and certain technical things hamper you and have a broken multiplayer system. And do you see what I mean?
yeah, I don't think that'll happen.
But they
anticipating a
need
pretty good
to
game.
go. I think the thing with GTA is that they need to go beyond just a new story and and creating an open world environment for you to do whatever you want. They really need to sort of think outside the box and think, well, how far can we actually take this? Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because if anyone's going to pull off that kind of sort of thinking, it's got to be Rockstar.
Yeah.
But no, I wouldn't necessarily. But GTA's come along so few and far between. If I'm honest, it's not something I would
Yeah,
necessarily.
I think a lot of it relates to also, if you look back, GTA's had certainly been a center point for a lot of protests and stuff like that, and I think they've developed
Yeah.
into a game where they just seem very open to doing a lot of different things. Like we were talking about having an open world, the multiplayer. That you could tell that's like it's not an afterthought. It's not like, oh, let's put a multiplayer with this game. Um, it's too involved for that. That they clearly aimed towards that multiplayer to make it like that. And then culturally, I've got to bring this up too. I think we're talking about what's wrong with gaming. Are we done with video game protests? Speaking of GTA, are we done with video game protests? Are we going to see any more? Do you think that the culture has changed enough that video games are accepted, that gaming is okay?
I don't know. I don't think you have on your side of the pond. If I'm honest, it's more an issue for you in the US than it is for us in the UK.
Okay, fair enough.
We're pretty sort of relaxed about this, and I think part and parcel of that it comes from the fact that before we had the PlayStation and modern consoles that are. I think it's worth also pointing out. I mean, the original PlayStation came as a result of a fallout between Sony and Nintendo, and it was actually developed and manufactured and sort of prototyped in Europe by Sony in the UK. And even looking at the PC industry and the way that modern video games are, a majority of the innovations and things that have kicked on the generation have come from our country. So, we're kind of open to this new kind of thinking because we sort of developed the process in the first place,
Okay.
if that makes sense. So, for us, it's not really. I don't know. We're just a lot more relaxed about the whole thing. There are times when, say for example, it's a slow news week and somebody decides in Guardian or the Daily Mail they want to rile people up and publish some crap story. But for the most part, I think people here are sensible enough to realise, a violent video game is a violent video game and it shouldn't be played by children. And so, in that respect, it's not even really an issue for debate. It has been a couple of times, but there isn't. It sort of fizzles out because nobody really cares. Because in all the time that we could be debating about the merits of it, why should we when we can actually be enjoying the game itself?
Well, and I'll say this: I do firmly believe that Call of Duty is played by a younger generation than the average gamer.
Mm.
Um, you can tell that by kind of like listening. I think you find a lot more younger gamers playing Call of Duty than what's considered the average age of a gamer nowadays, as we learned from the stats. So, I don't know. I mean, there's maybe we're losing. What is that? Generation Z? What's the latest generation? Is it Generation Z?
I don't know.
Maybe
Probably.
we're losing Generation Z to a specific type of gaming. While us older guys are going and taking up phone games and Facebook games. So it's hard. It's interesting that we don't have stats on that. It's interesting though that I firmly believe that if we were to look into it, we'd find that the younger crowd's the one tipped towards that the Call of Duty, exclusively.
I'm intrigued to find out more from
not trying
yourself.
to take risks and stuff like that.
I'm intrigued to find out more from yourself and what it's like on your side in terms of protest. Cause,
Well, I can just remember. I can remember, like, it was big national news, and we've had some school shootings and stuff like that where video games come up, violent video games come up, and we've had people to the likes of Hillary Clinton stand up and say that video games are bad. But not really realizing the amount of gamers and stuff in this country. I think stuff like that dies down pretty quick, but it still pops back up. We have, I think it's probably issues with the media and maybe even our current political system where, they tend to look for a scapegoat for other issues instead of like handling it. It's the same with guns. The impression of the world is that we're all, crazy gun-toting Americans,
Yeah.
and there are a lot of guns here, but the percentage of guns that are used in crimes, that are from legitimate gun owners, from those millions of people that do own guns, because a lot of people do. Um, but it shows that we're not all crazy. We're safe with our guns.
Do you think then part of the problem is obviously, in terms of violent video games, is that because in your day-to-day life, obviously in America, is that there is still that link. I mean, obviously it's not proven or anything, but if someone, say, shoots someone or does one of those high school shootings, as you mentioned, but has played Call of Duty, which is obviously a game full of guns, I can't blame people for making the link to it, even if that's not necessarily what's responsible. I mean, here in the UK, guns, aren't really an issue for us because nobody has them. So, they really, those instances where there's some very serious violent crime, there's no way it can kind of be linked back because it's not something, it's what we necessarily call an extraordinary event. But, in the US, for example, and I'm talking about the whole of the US, just in certain sections, shootings and stuff are, in some respect, a common thing. And so, therefore, I can understand people linking to them, and that, even if I disagree with the link itself. Do you think that's part of the problem?
Well, I think culturally we look at video games. We we're going to see them based on our viewpoint, and I think that's why I say politicians look for something like almost like a scapegoat kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's in our entire culture. The way we look at things is different than the rest of the world. And what strikingly tells me that is, like, I can remember being a kid and having cable, what's known as cable here in the United States, where you had to pay extra to get certain channels, and watching Benny Hill and seeing boobs. And then, we're up to the point now, you fast forward to today, and even in the U.S. on regular television, they can't show that kind of stuff, which in Europe, across Europe, you will see, people that are naked. You'll see, late at night especially, you'll see people that are naked on television.
I'm just trying to remember the name of that funny program that was on Channel 4. I think it was called Eurotrash or something. It was pretty cool. I remember that.
Yeah, well, boobs late at night.
Yeah.
Well, you see my point there. It's like, and in the U.S. it's like this, it's equated to sex and, teenage pregnancies and all these things, and it's like, we're trying to shelter people from that. Our interpretation is we got to keep them away from those kind of things because exposure to them is going to turn them into that.
Yeah, but see that's see. I mean, we've talked about this before, and this is where it sort of makes me question it. It's like, so the exposure to like things like boobs and sex on TV is an issue, but being exposed to millions of guns readily available isn't an issue. And I think, speaking from an English person's perspective, different culture's perspective, I don't necessarily want to be judgmental, but I think you've got that kind of backwards, really, which is the sex thing's not really an issue, but the gun thing should be. Because the sex thing isn't going to kill you, a gun is.
Yeah, but here's the thing that I've always...
And that's the logical UK thinking behind it, which is, if someone sees a bit of boob, they see a bit of boob, they'll probably forget about it in a week. Someone sees somebody shot on the street and they're traumatised for life.
Yeah.
And there's all the fallout from it.
It's still video games, it's still television. I don't really believe that, violence in video games. I'm one of those people, again, I have to disagree. I don't think it's a problem whatsoever. I think people can differentiate that. If they can't, then they've got some mental issue anyway. You got to understand that, in the U.S., our exposure to guns is kind of on a different level. It's more open here, And the whole concept is that no, we're not all crazy cowboy gun-toting, carrying guns and all this other stuff. The whole idea is that we have the right to own them and keep them. It's not the same thing as we're running out shooting them off and we're doing the whole walking down the street packing. And that's the mentality is because of the involvement with the crime rate with guns, that somehow that's affected by video games. I seriously doubt it. Your average kid here in the U.S., if you were to put a gun in his hand and they were to pull the trigger on that, they'd be scared to death. They'd be scared to death to hold it. They'd be scared to death to see it. And
Yeah, but I
any
would
amount of
question.
exposure to
Yeah,
video
but
game death is not gonna.
here's where I'd question it, and I don't just want to sort of put video games into that, but obviously TV and movies, the more sort of violent side of things, the more you watch of, the bit boob on telly at late at night or play a video game and stuff, it sort of desensitizes you a little bit to it. That's just the way it is. But like here in the UK, for example, being desensitized from shooting people isn't an issue because obviously we can't just then go out and buy a gun and decide to, no, this will be fun. It's not going to bother me.
Well,
I'm
you're still exposed
desensitized
to
to
it.
it.
Are you not desensitized to? Are you? If guns became available tomorrow, are people going to be desensitized to that and go buy guns and it'll be okay to use them? No, you've been exposed to the same kind of
Because,
things with
well,
video
to be,
games.
to be honest with you, we've never legalized gun ownership anyway.
No, but I'm saying my point is you've been exposed to the same kind of things with guns and video games, and you yourself probably have never held one, you've never seen one shot off, any of that other kind of stuff. That does you're not, it still holds its same value as a gun to you, despite all your video game history, doesn't it?
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that I don't think that they're as directly related as people claim to. And it's the same
No,
thing with
I'm not.
other violence. Take GTA, okay? Let's say GTA 5 comes out, and it has, forgive me for kind of putting this to, it has a marathon bombing level or something like that. Does anything like that speak to, that's going to turn, people to being cold to what happened in Boston? Is it going to be like, oh well, it's bombs and that's, who cares? We've seen that in real life. That's how it's connected, or I mean, you can't make those jumps. You can't say that that's one's going to cause people to be careless or to be interested in that.
Well, let me just
People that are
clarify then,
mentally
because
unstable might draw to those kind of things, but they're mentally unstable anyway. It's other
let me
things in
just
their life that do
clarify. I
that.
don't disagree with you. Please don't think I do. I don't think video games necessarily cause violence, but I do think more does need to be looked into about the possibility of it, because as much as we'd like to sort of deny it, somewhere along the line we can take the stance of, well, if someone's mentally ill before they played a video game, they're still going to be mentally ill after they've played the video game, and whatever actions they conduct obviously a result of the mental illness, not the video game. But at the same time, we still need to look into every possibility that there could be an issue there that is driving people there. I mean, I was watching one of the technological programs over here, and in China, for example, they've got like a Call of Duty type game, which is a Chinese knockoff, and it's been built purely to as a propaganda tool for young adults and children to get involved with the military, and it's actually seen the Chinese military numbers go up because people want to do in real life what they've done in the video game. And they interviewed a lot of these people, and they were all saying the same thing. So obviously China have cottoned on to something there, and so I think the whole video game violence thing, I don't want to say that one's responsible for the other, but at the same time I do still think it needs looking at. I think it's ignorant to not say that it needs more exploration in it.
Hmm. Well,
because there are some issues there and some definitive questions that need answering, because you know as much as we can, we as an industry and gamers have a valid argument when we put our point across, but it's not without its flaws. So there are some questions that still need answering there, and the only way to do that is to keep monitoring through research rather than having the next US senator or British MP stand up and just outright blame it, blame events on video games. What they actually need to be saying is, well, let's study this, let's look at it, and work with the industry to do that.
yeah, I just think that like you'll see worse on the nightly news here in the United States. I really I can't equate it to somebody just taking that up and being like, oh, that's cool because of video game violence and taking to that, or it making it easier. I mean, certainly you can train somebody on something, and you can even use video games to train them on equipment. But I just, like, even if you trained on a piece of military equipment on a video game, I don't see it as like, well, that makes it easier to kill someone because, well, I've seen it happen a million times on a video game. I guess I can't make that leap. And it just, to me, it doesn't seem the same as, exposing someone to it on television and things like that. That doesn't make people, if you see it every night on the nightly news, it's still shocking to see, people
Well,
killed in a bombing in the Boston Marathon. You don't look at that and go, I saw the same thing on TV last night. It doesn't have
well,
the same
so,
effect anymore.
but
Quite
the
the
point I'm
contrary,
trying
you're
to
still...
make, the point I'm trying to make though is that you do make a fairly compelling argument, and I think most gamers would probably agree with you.
Mhm.
But at the same time, we also have to accept two things: is that that argument is kind of biased from our own perspectives, because we're obviously defending the thing that we really enjoy most, and also that there are flaws in there that essentially flaws that we can't argue against, and so therefore and that's what I'm saying. The whole thing really needs to sort of be explored, and us as gamers need to be kind of open-minded a bit more about the possibilities of that. Because, as I say, I'm not disagreeing with you. I completely agree with you, but at the same time, I'm open-minded enough to acknowledge that somewhere along the line something's wrong that's causing people to do things, and whether there's a link or not, it does genuinely need to be explored. Because if there is, we need to then, once a link's then found, obviously the idea is to kind of see how we can resolve and kick on from there,
Mhm.
so those things don't happen. So you know,
Well, something to be said about it, I guess.
proactive all the way. But yeah, I was going to say before, I'm kind of intrigued by the whole protesting thing against video games, because again, it's not something we really see here. I remember a conversation we had, late last year, about Assassin's Creed 3, and you were like, "Oh, we've been hearing all these news reports where British people are annoyed because, like, you get to go out and kill redcoats or whatever, loads of British people and stuff," and I barely saw the news here flutter at the controversy of it, yet you were saying over there it was this perceived issue, and I'm kind of intrigued about that a bit more, because, as I say, here it wasn't even
And
an
and we
issue.
have games where they're pulling out stuff because you know, certain countries have taken offense and things like that, which is, I find, kind of weird too, because if you're a video game developer, like say you were doing something modern, and we're fighting the Taliban, and you put Taliban in there, and I mean, is it they get offended, and the Taliban calls up Activision and says, hey, that's not really nice, and Activision goes, oh, okay, we'll pull it. It's
Yeah, the whole Medal of Honor thing. I mean,
it's kind
to
of
be honest,
weird.
well, I think the weird thing with that particular situation with Medal of Honor was the fact that it was okay to call them Taliban throughout the single-player campaign, but when you're playing it in multiplayer, where you've got real people shooting other real people virtually online, it's not okay to call them the Taliban. So then, what I would question with EA there is that if they're going to bow down to that, why did they just change the multiplayer and not the whole thing?
Redo.
I don't know. It's a very bizarre thing, because and that highlights, I guess, some of the stupidity around some of the controversy as well. Yeah, We saw the whole thing with the Modern Warfare maps. It's like 3 years afterwards because there was an Islamic saying in there,
Yeah,
oh, right, well, we've got to shut
change one
down
of
the
the map.
servers for like a week so we can change it. The game's 3 years old. Who cares? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we're getting an older crowd of gamers too, clearly. So I would think we're getting it. So it should be to the point where it's so ingrained in culture now, where we should stop seeing protests or anyone calling for stuff to be changed. You would think. I mean, you would think we're getting to that point, but
Well, it
I think
makes me
people take
wonder.
video games too seriously. The other thing you got to realize, it's a form of entertainment, and if you look at what's been done in other forms of entertainment, like movies, you
Yeah.
certainly can't say that they've bowed down and changed what content's in those based on offending anyone, or
Mm.
they simply stamp their R rating on it and be done with it, and you get the same kind of
Well, that's
um,
what puzzles me. I mean, if you're that much offended, why on earth would you put yourself in a position where you want to be offended? You know what I'm saying?
mhm.
Just don't buy it. I mean, if it really is that bad for you, just don't. If you really strongly feel that it's going to offend you, then don't buy it.
Yeah.
Don't get involved with it. Do something else. That's the beauty of freedom. But I guess in certain avenues, that can be a bit more complex. But I never understood that.
I
Why
don't know. I'm
people would
still
rather complain and have something taken out, and the other alternative is don't buy it.
I'm still flabbergasted by how people look at it. I'm one of those people. I think we learned from the stats. I'm one of those people that, like, I would control TV time.
Mm.
Limit that more than I would be concerned about video games. So, and
I don't know. So, given the certain, given my experience with certainly this generation, with the amount of numerous different, I would say, extremely violent video games that I've played, there are certain things that I would let pass, and other things where I just genuinely wouldn't. Not necessarily because I would think, crap, they're gonna go out and shoot people, but I just don't think it's appropriate. You know,
yeah,
I would never imagine my nephew sitting down and playing God of War 3 and sticking his fingers into the eyeballs of bloody Perseus or whatever his name was at the beginning of God of War 3. I don't think that kind of thing is really appropriate.
hmm. Next thing you know, he'd be popping your eyeballs out.
But, I think, from a parent's perspective, I mean, I think you kind of know what you feel is best and what you don't. So, I would like to see more parents take a stance. It's all right to, especially ones that are very complacent about violent video games, because quite often the ones that protest and complain about violent video games are the ones that are giving it to their kids and saying, shut up, go keep quiet for 2 hours. Do you know what I'm saying? So,
Well, and there's something to be said about what you're saying there. I think parenting is obviously parenting, being there for your kid, teaching them right from wrong is going to be more important than all of this. A kid that's got a good background, they're close to their parents, they're not the ones that are going to have those issues that you'd have to worry about anyway. So, as far as a kid maturing into a stable adult, you can't say enough about that. If you are giving your kid violent video games, but you're there and you're playing them and you're teaching them about what's right and wrong, that's going to be much more stronger than what you're saying, taking that kid and throwing him in the corner.
yeah, because I
Um,
think
I do
most,
firmly believe that, because
I think,
there's one thing I've learned about criminals is they have no concept of right and wrong
yeah.
that's taught to them by their parents. Um,
And I think, when we talk about the millions of young kids that are playing Call of Duty, it's quite obvious, certainly from a lot of stuff that you see on YouTube videos and stuff, that a lot of parents don't do that, which rather than protest, maybe people need to be educated by that.
yeah.
If your son wants the latest Call of Duty game, and it's not rated appropriate for their age, then if you're going to get it for them, at least sit down and play with them, and teach them, as you say, about the rights and wrongs of it, and
Well, what do you
at
think?
least.
What do you think Call of Duty would be like if no one under 18 played it? Like, if you turned it on right now and we were to say every kid under 18 absolutely was not allowed to play it, even with parents' permission, they were turned off, would we see like a significant drop in their regular Call of Duty player numbers? Would we see
Probably,
would
but
online go a lot more smoothly because you wouldn't have a little kid cussing you out about something stupid and
yeah.
talking smack and
Simple answer, yes, and it would be paradise.
huh.
It would encourage me more to play it more, if I'm honest, and with my headset on.
It would,
So,
interestingly enough, it would be a good thing to see, the franchise have something where they have an adult server. How about
yeah.
that?
But it's funny you
Prove you're
mentioned
an
that
adult and you
because
can play on it.
indie game Minecraft has taken a stance on that, which is obviously you can play online multiplayer with it and have servers, but there's also the fact that you can have a family server as well. So you can pay for the privilege, have a family server that's locked to your family, and they can bring their friends in, and you can dismiss their friends if need be and stuff. And I think that kind of is a cool way of handling parents' control. So I'd kind of like to see that sort of happen more with first-person shooters and violent video games with online multiplayer. I'd like them to sort of be able to purchase maybe their own bit of space that they can play online with.
That's an
And
interesting
then,
thought.
at least the parents then have some control over that, and you're not encouraging the kids to then go out and randomly cuss
Didn't
other players with no consequences.
Battlefield had something like that, right?
Yeah, and it's proven fairly successful.
Yeah. And I think I would
So-
probably pay a little bit extra if I could dedicate a server to my son and his friends without having some random coming in there.
Yeah, and responding to any foul language. So, there are solutions there. I just wish publishers and developers would build more of them, and also at the same time do it with the knowledge of not money grabbing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
In terms of not overcharging just for the sake of offering that feature. I think that's an appealing feature that they could implement into those sorts of things. So it could do a lot to diffuse a lot of the issues around the whole violent video games for kids is bad as well.
Yeah. Okay, so social media, Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z, connectivity is all starting to become more and more important. As we move forward, social media is just surrounding everything. You're able to use Facebook to log on to things now. Is there some responsibility with that for the gaming community to tie in different regions better, to make it so that there's perhaps cross-language gaming, perhaps regional splits and divides kind of go away so that, the same with social media, so we're able to connect with those people. Facebook, you could have someone from another country, and you could very easily put, like Google Translate has the ability, someone can type something and it can be translated into your language, not always clearly and cleanly. But even, some of the online multiplayer and stuff like that, you have the ability to play with other countries even if they don't speak English. So are we moving towards something where gaming has a responsibility to help kind of pull these other countries in together? Because the more we do that, then the more we're going to learn from each other. We're going to be more the same. We're going to see the other side's point.
Well, before I address it,
World peace and all that.
Would just ask you this: knowing your feelings on social media, would you actually really care?
Well, I would like to see a system where we could certainly enjoy the same things that other countries are, so that their gaming doesn't become so significantly different that there's always going to be a long-term disconnect.
Unified
Well,
sort of culture.
what I mean is this: like, I relate to my personal experience. I have gone on PlayStation Home before, on other regions, and we're not talking about like minor differences, where something's slightly different color or something like that. We're talking about like almost like a total complete revamp of the look, the games, prices, what's available. Some things available in one that are not available in another. And it seems to me that, if they're developing content for a whole country and then it's just shared with that country and not the rest of the world, like the rest of the world has no option, then it's kind of almost um,
Well, certainly in the case of PlayStation Home, I'm not against them creating, country identities through virtual mediums. What I am against is not allowing other countries to come and visit those without going through a set of complex,
make a new
annoying
account.
workarounds
Yeah,
to do it.
put in some address from that country. Translate everything in the store to, if you're going to buy something, what's it cost in yen? What's it cost in pounds? What's it,
Well, even just forget about the purchasing stuff. I mean, I can't go into another region's home square and talk to some of my international friends on there. No, I have to go to that person's individually bought home space, and that's all I'll see. Well, I'm there, and that for me is frustrating. I'm not even bothered about the purchasing stuff from other regions, because that's obviously a question of whether or not you'd want to purchase virtual items anyway, which is a different discussion for a different day. But I'm all for them creating individual identities for the countries, but they need to be able to link them together. And unfortunately, they don't do that at all. And certainly in the case of PlayStation Home, it causes a bit of animosity. And we've seen that even outside of virtual spaces in terms of if something's released digitally in the US, why can't it be released digitally in Europe? We're not talking about something that's overly complex to do, and yet it somehow becomes overly complex to do. Do you
well,
see what I mean?
look at how open, like, look at how open the internet is. You can get on there, you can find, you know, violent videos. You can get on there and find porn, all that kind of stuff. It's so open. And then, like with the PlayStation, I could get on. I could do a video chat with someone, um, you know, in the other side of the world. Yet, I can't get on and play PlayStation Home. It's so regulated, and
Hmm.
it's all these region things are set up now, which I don't know how we would step back from that. How do you get away from that now that it's all established and going forward?
Well, the honest answer is that everybody needs to rise up and complain at Sony for it. It's the only way you're ever
But
going
would
to get
Sony
them
have
to
the
change.
power to do that worldwide, or
Of
is
course
it
they do.
again that stigma on gaming that it somehow has to be controlled for the sake of the
No,
youth?
no, no. Sony have the option to do that. I mean, when we first started talking about PS3, Sony were saying, if a game releases in America, release it in Europe at the same time. We're going to have this non-regionalisation thing. Unfortunately, never came to realise that dream. And purely, I think that's because they got distracted, caught off guard, and with a lot of other things, as we know Sony has suffered as a result of some of the difficulties they've encountered. So it's not necessarily been as easy as they initially anticipated. But
Well, we've also talked about
certainly with
releasing a game. Now, you can release a game in Europe. You've got to go through different standards. You've got to do different rating system than you do in the U.S. and that you do in Japan. So, we've talked about this before too. It's the process is different. The
yep,
approval process might take different lengths of time.
yep.
You know, that's why I say, how do you step back from that? And that's creating
Because
all these cultural divides.
but at the same time, Sony have it within their power. For example, if someone says, "I want to submit a game to Sony Computer Entertainment America," and Sony Computer Entertainment America should be asking, "Well, are you going to release this to other regions?" And if the developer says yes, then Sony Computer Entertainment America should be saying, "Well, first of all, Sony America, Sony Europe, and Sony Japan have different approval processes. So in order for us to release that onto the store in our region, we need you to start the processes with the other regions and so on." So, I think Sony doesn't do a great deal to work with their other regional counterparts, and that's part of the problem.
Hmm.
What's to say? And we said this before. Why can't Sony America hold up a game for 2 weeks while it's going through processing in Europe? it's totally within Sony America's power to do that, but they just choose not to. And then it causes some animosity, because then if there's a technical issue with the European one that causes it to be delayed, the Americans still release theirs, but the Americans then have to have theirs patched and so on like that. So I don't know. They need to start working together with that kind of thing. And if a developer goes to a specific Sony region for PSN and says we want to submit this, then that PSN region should then be saying to people that want to go multi-region with the PSN releases, that what the processes are, and help them more with that. And we've seen that Sony can be pretty helpful with developers and publishers, but in some areas they fall flat on their face, and that's one of them. And it does cause this, as I say, this issue of animosity between the regions, which doesn't really need to be there in the first place.
Yeah, it just seems to me that with the reach of social media and stuff like that in the world, because it's causing a huge cultural change. I mean, you have to, if you're a student of history, you realize that the more people are connected, the less they develop their opinions from, what the government says. Like video game protests, a perfect example. The more people that are playing video games, and you start to realize that, some of the scapegoating that our politicians try to do, you realize, well, that's not really the cause of this kind of stuff. And things like hot coffee, video game sex were such a big issue that, you look back on it now and you're just like, well, that's just freaking silly. The truth of the matter is, it was a mod that was downloaded, and you had to have the technical expertise to download that and everything else, and that's not something that kids are going to do, or that kids should be exposed to. It wasn't put into the regular game, and
let's be honest, if they really wanted it that bad enough, they could always just go and watch it on TV, YouTube, the internet, or just import one of those crazy Japanese games.
Or just go on a porn site and type in their supposed date of birth that would let them connect, and they'd be fine. And you're just like...
Yeah, I have to admit, that website don't do a very good job of age gating. You watch a trailer for an 18-rated game, and all it asks is for your date of birth. It doesn't actually check anything,
And there's some very strict laws here in the United States dealing with, protecting children and stuff like that. And, in their crazy controlling, and actually fines and stuff are a big one with the FTC here in the United States, for keeping and retaining information about kids as members and exposing them to that. Yeah, what do you see? You see, like, just what you said. You got, just put in your age, put in your date of birth. Well, today I want to be 18 because I want to see that trailer. Here you go.
It's not a very effective way of doing it, is it?
No, it's not. But
they do look at that. But when we talk about what's wrong with gaming and stuff, I do want to highlight that I don't think social media is an issue with gaming, although some people, certainly in response to the PS4 stuff, yourself included, I know it is an issue with regards to PS4, but I think social media is probably one of the more positive aspects of the gaming industry, just in the way that, as you say, as we connect with, socially, via various networks, a lot of people are still keeping their cultural identity, but are able to share that with more and more people, and the same goes with gaming, and it's had an impact in, seeing some of the games that wouldn't necessarily even get released here 5-6 years ago, actually starting to find their way to these shores. Things like, Deadly Premonition, for example, or the Persona series, the Hyper Dimension series, for example, and Sega are already looking at doing Hatsune Miku, Project Diva, that coming over to the West on PS3, and that's because people have connected, found out more about it via social media, and as a result it's garnered that interest, which has then caused people to go to Sega and say, we really want this in the West, can you do that? And so then Sega then go out on a promotion thing saying, well, do you want us to do it? Let's gauge the interest, and if so, bring it across.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, that's one aspect of the positive aspects of social media. You could argue about all the privacy aspects of it, but, I think, that's up to you to sort out yourself in terms of what you're willing to do about that. But overall, social media serves a very, very valuable tool, and not just for connecting with people and getting personal with people, but also for many other different variations as well. So, I would certainly never class that as something that's wrong with the industry. In
Well,
fact, it's something I'd want to see more of.
yeah, and I just point to the fact of like how strongly social media is implemented into our kids nowadays. Yet, we're talking about a medium again, Facebook. It should be under those same restrictions with age, creating accounts and everything like that. Yet it's
Well, it
not.
is.
No, it's not. It's not enforced. It's not anything that they can really track or do anything about. Again, a person could just enter the information, lie, whatever. It's not verified. Um, so, again, I mean, you could have young kids having social media accounts, getting exposed to things, the
But
likes of
how
which
many?
are
Yeah,
nothing
but how many
compared to a
young
video
kids?
game.
Yeah, but how many young kids already do that anyway?
That's what I'm
Now,
saying.
because I know a lot of young kids that do that
I do
already
too.
now, and my niece and nephews for starters.
I do too.
So
Yet they got to be a certain age to buy video games. You see my point? So we're talking about an age where television violence,
yeah,
television
but
sex,
again, like
social
you
media
say,
is connecting people all around the world where they could talk to
but with
somebody from another
yeah, but
country who could say God
with
knows what.
but again with the Facebook stuff is similar with way with the video game aspect in that the parents sort of need to instill that right, wrong, and this is because we've had this discussion before about the fact that when you're online, whether you use Facebook or not, or Twitter or not, anything you do online is a digital representation of your digital real self, and so you'd have to conduct your digital self as you would your real self, and so that's why it's important to instill values about the way that you use digital things like networks and social networks and PSN IDs and so on, because then you ensure that they've got values, that the people using those online have got values and are not going to go and abuse people and do stuff that they really shouldn't be doing across Facebook.
Well,
In
they're
the
gonna
same
go and
way the
make a
parents
fake
have a
account and do
response.
that anyway if they choose to. But
Hmm.
my point being is that with all that, isn't there an inappropriate amount of restrictions on video games, considering all that?
Yeah, I don't know.
When you
I would,
purchase them and proving your age, and all the stuff with the cross regions, like how could something be okay in the U.S. but then it takes longer and it doesn't pass muster in Europe, or vice
yeah.
versa? If the internet is so open and social media is so open and television is so open. Um,
Yeah, I think what you've highlighted there is one of the issues, which is, to be honest with you, it's not something you could really discuss in a 2-hour show or solve the problem with, because it
no,
requires so much cooperative work from so many different people at any one particular time.
but I
You
guess the
know,
more I think about it, I think video games have a bad rap. We're set up in a bad spot with the way it's released.
yeah.
Maybe digital content and stuff like that, digitally delivered. Um, Maybe that'll change this in the future.
I think maybe one of the other problems is that, when we look at some of the issues that affect the gaming industry as a whole, though, we look at them as individual issues. Don't ever look at the whole bigger picture. I think that's part of the problem as well,
Yeah.
if that makes sense, because, it's alright dealing with different issues like violence in video games and whether they're appropriate and whether parents are doing the right thing or if there's an addiction or, this, that and the other, but they all contribute to the bigger picture. So, you kind of need countries or, the regulatory bodies sort of, grouping up together and really discussing the whole bigger issue, the whole all the issues on a bigger stage in a bigger picture, really, because it would give you a clear insight into it overall, and some of the solutions that could be come as a result of that. But
Mm.
as you see, some even in Europe with the things like the economic crisis, not everybody's always willing to work with each other. I think that's part of the problem, I guess.
Yeah. Hmm. I don't know. So, what other challenges do you see with gaming? You think we're on the right track? Do you think we're gonna snap out of this stuff anytime soon? Do you think like some of the implementation with the PS4 stuff's going to help with that? Um,
I don't know. I think it will. I'm still sort of undecided on some of it. I've seen some compelling cases for things like the social media and being able to display your real name should you choose to do that. And some of the video sharing functionality that could have other uses would certainly cut out a lot of things like, well, I wouldn't say cut it out completely, but it certainly reduce things like online abuse and, whether it be racist or just outright abuse and bullying and stuff like that. I think it would cut, certainly into the numbers of some of the things that go on with that. And, that's a positive impact. I think the thing is whether or not it does, I don't know, but because obviously we're yet to have it in our hands. But I think there's so many more positives to negatives, you know.
hmm.
I think overall, and the frustrating thing is that from my perspective, and one of the things that I just want to highlight when we did a show about 2 weeks ago, where we were talking about the applications and implications of PS 4, and I had a look through the thread, and all I heard was social media this, social media that, and how crap it's going to be, and how much I don't want it, blah blah blah, and the truth of the matter is that in people focusing on that one issue, they actually missed the point of what we were trying to say is what are the implications for the new apps that are coming to PS4? How are we going to use them? How are we going to interact with them? We weren't talking necessarily just about social media. We were talking about Netflix and iPlayer and like entertainment apps. How are they going to change? And are we going to get more illustrious grand apps and stuff like that? And it got lost because everybody was so busy focusing on that one social media aspect of it. And that for me was a real shame because it kind of missed what we were trying to say.
Yeah.
We were trying to get people to think out of the box and say, right, well, would you want voice control for Netflix? Would you want to be able to voice dial, you could say to your PS4 camera, I would like to talk to PSN ID, blah, 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 and it would dial it up in game. The applications and the implications of it overall. And as I say, everybody was so focused on this social media thing, they kind of lost the point we were trying to make.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's relevant to what we're saying here is that because people are focusing on one issue or another issue, they're kind of missing the whole picture and some of the messages that are involved with that. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that the gaming industry is going to have to handle because in some respects we see that with games now that there's so many different because people gamers themselves get so fixated on certain messages within promoting or marketing or game topics that they kind of lose some of the meaning and the messages, and so therefore that's where some of these complications like protests and so on and misunderstandings come from.
Yeah. Oh.
Just going to point the finger at you as well because you were part to blame for that as well.
How's
I
that?
read your posts in there.
Oh yeah.
You
Well.
were to blame with that. You were stoking a fire. Don't deny it. I've got the proof.
Well, people look at stuff and they see what they want to see, and they're interested in what features and stuff that they're interested in, or they're afraid of what features that they're afraid of. It's just it's natural for us to want to talk about the things that directly relate to us the most, and so I don't know. I mean, I'm up in the air about everything with it. I'm one of those people. I gotta just see it. It's it's up to them to develop it the way they're going to develop it.
Yeah.
My opinion's not going to change what features they put in.
Yeah.
Not going to
Well,
change
see,
the direction.
because when I watched that press conference, there was one thing that was very apparent to me that certain other console manufacturers and games publishers and designers had kind of lost the plot with, which is, they have this interpretation that we live in an online world, and we all play online multiplayer games, but yet there is still that level of disconnect. Do you know what I mean? You know, people not putting their headsets on, people not messaging each other.
Yeah,
Yet
exactly.
they're quite happy to go and shoot millions of people with each other. And so, you know, when I sort of sat there and watched that original PS4 launch conference, I could have quite happily sat there and applauded them all the way through because, you know, what they were saying in some respects is they need to get rid of that disconnect and bring back the socialness of gaming because, you know, in some ways in the old days the social aspect came from sitting on a couch with your buddy. Obviously people moved on, you know, changed lifestyles and so on, but there isn't that camaraderie, the, you know, the competition, the friendliness and stuff with it. It's now all rather serious competitive, and if people don't want to get into that, they then just don't say anything at all and they become disconnected. And so, you know, it kind of bugs me that we live in a digital world where every device is connected, yet there's still that disconnect. And you know, I really like the ethos of Sony to push that forward. And you know, social media is unfortunately going to be part of that for some people, but you know, in the nicest possible way. You've got to get over that because if not, are you really happy with things being the way they are, where you feel disconnected, even though you're digitally connected to everyone?
Hmm. Some people just plain don't want to connect. And then
Don't buy the
there's
Wii.
something to be said too about there's something to be said about the ease of which you can connect too. You know, I mean, we can't say that, you know, the texting someone on PSN is certainly a smooth process. You know, it's not. It's complicated and it's interruptive, and you know. So I mean, they develop those kind of things and they work better. I'm sure they'll get a larger percentage on board. Uh, but they've you know, it's just how it's implemented, how it works. You know, you can go 180 degrees the other way and cram it down people's throat, and that's just as bad.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you don't do that, I mean, what more is it going to take people to do? Do they really want something free in order to do it, or what? You know, at some point you're going to have to force change on people because they just won't accept change because it's change. You see what I mean?
Well, yeah, no, because you know, I'm talking about maybe it's not the fear of change, but just maybe you're not liking that kind of change. So the
Well,
sense
then
being
feed it
that,
back.
what's that?
So then feed it back, or you know, don't get involved
Well,
or
you're
don't
just one
join in.
voice. Clearly they're moving that direction. It's not like you know, again, I say it's not like they're getting my opinion to form that. But I simply said that, you know, for all that you've got to say about how great social media is, it's also it can be overwhelming, and I realize that from, you know, my experiences and stuff with Facebook and everything like that. I don't care what hundreds of my friends are doing at any particular point in time, what they post on their wall. I don't have time to read that, nor the fact that they're out walking their dog, or their political opinions, or their invitations to Farmville that they send by the thousands. That stuff
Does
doesn't
that
matter to
like
me.
yeah? But the thing is, if you're not interested in those sorts of things, by definition, does that make them not your friend? Because you know, this is what I say to you in some respect. If you were walking down the
Well,
street
that's my point.
and
That's my
you
point.
saw a friend and they walked over and instead of having a conversation they passed you a note, are you really going to throw that note in the bin? Do you know what I'm saying? It's just
But at the same time, you know, this is something that you can say about, like, you look at your PS3 friends list. How many of those people do you actually know? You know,
like
we're always going to have those people that are on on the edge of those things where they're acquaintances, or you know, you enjoy playing a certain game with them. You know, that this is my point. You're a great, you know, Call of Duty player, and I enjoy having you in my clan, and I enjoy playing Call of Duty with you when I play. But then I don't want to hang out with you. I don't want to have conversations with you. I don't want to hear about your, you know, your thoughts on, you know, Obama. I don't want to hear, you know, I don't want to play Farmville with you too, just because we.
yeah, but then I would
That's the thing. It
question yeah,
becomes overwhelming.
but I would curiously question the why you not want to do that, and does that make you like proper antisocial? Because you could say the same thing as I say about a stranger you meet in the street. or even someone you regularly meet, in a coffee shop, for example. If you're not interested in anything they have to say, or you don't care, why would you be meeting there and talking to them, about things that you have in common? you know, I'm trying to put a real world analogy to sort of emphasise how daft a point that really is.
I don't know, but I've got a number of years on me, and it's not the same as when you're
That's like
younger.
saying I don't want to make friends with people.
When you're in
Well,
high
why would you
school, your
make
number of friends seems to matter a lot more than when you're older and you've got a family, and you start hanging with people that are along the same lines as you, and they've got kids, and that doesn't mean you know.
Yeah, but if you're not willing to share with other new people, how can you know if you've got common interests and want to be friends with them?
Well, I
If you're
guess I
not
would say
willing to
if you've
if you're
reached a
not,
certain number of close personal friends, I think that you probably.
yeah, but then why does there have to be a limit on it? Why do you have to limit it and say, right, well, I've now got 10 close personal friends, I don't need any more? You
Okay,
know,
I'm antisocial.
that's the point I'm trying to make. When you say these things, are I couldn't care less about what people put on their Facebook or blah blah blah. Well, you'd have to question why you a letting them post stuff on there, and b why you're friends with them anyway if you really don't care. Because surely the whole point of being friends with somebody is, part of the definition of friendship is you at least have to have some common ground to be able to discuss and be friends about.
Well,
Otherwise, what's the point?
I would equate it to like my Facebook friends like went up like times five. 500% increase when I had my high school reunion. Everyone sending, and I recognize names, sending me a friend request. Are you going to be at the reunion? Yes, I'm going to the reunion. Blah blah blah. And there's people that used to be friends, people that used to be acquaintances, people that I'd catch up with them and I would talk with them, and I certainly did that when I went to the high school reunion, 20-year high school reunion, 20-year. um, and that's all fine and great, but then afterwards it becomes like, well, yeah, I knew you 20 years ago. How does that equate to
But
now
if they're
we're
still
connected?
not your friends
They're still on
now,
my friends list.
if they're not your friends now, then why would you add them anyway?
So
Doesn't matter if you've known them for 20 years or not. If you're not friends with them now, then
So you're
for the
saying for me
first
to make the
surely
best
to
of my
add them.
social media, I should get on there and clear out 80% of them and just nuke them. You're no
Yeah,
longer unfriend
absolutely, of
them.
course.
Well,
It's your friends list, mate. You put your friends on your friends
I
list
guess
if
then
they're not
I
your
guess that's where
friends
I'm
and they're
misusing
only
Facebook.
acquaintances. Don't add them.
I guess that's where I'm misusing Facebook.
Yes,
I should prune my friends list, and then I would be much more happier with it.
precisely. And I think that's part of the problem that certainly with social media is that people feel this compelling urge that they must be friends with they must add people that have acquaintances, or they must add people that they don't have an interest, don't
They
share
can
similar
they can
interests.
add their
No
friend's
similar,
family
no,
dog who has
yeah.
an account so that they can send them stuff for Farmville, extra stuff or whatever.
If you don't want your friend's dog on your Facebook friends list, don't add them. And see, this is the misconception, though. Then talking about it seriously for just a second, is that the information you share and the information that other people share are in your control with a tool like Facebook. You just have to understand it slightly more than the basic concept of what Facebook is, and just use the settings. And there's no
Yeah,
moral.
spend time learning it, spend time doing it every day.
Well, not
That I
every
could
day.
spend time doing other things.
Oh, come on, it's not that hard. I mean, everybody's got cell phones that's able to access it. I mean, come on. You know, I think again, this comes back to the whole thing is that people are so focused on that they kind of um, you know I would say develop a misunderstanding about it, or then the message gets lost, and then some of the real issues that are really plaguing Facebook kind of get lost behind it all, and I don't know. I just encourage people to use it more, and I think it is a positive within the games industry. There's not something wrong with it, and we've seen it have a positive impact in so many different ways. Call of Duty, to its fairness, would not be the powerhouse franchise it is today if it hadn't been for YouTube, Facebook, and social media and tools. So just think, if you have a favourite franchise, for example, Assassin's Creed, GTA, or even some bizarre Japanese anime RPG game, you could possibly, I don't want to say that the Call of Duty thing was a fluke, although it's proving to be the case at the moment, but those could be the next Call of Duties by using things like social media tools properly and getting communities together and connecting with people that have common interests with you. I've had some fantastic discussions on Facebook, but I
Hmm.
also make sure that I only add people, obviously there's the immediate family, but, I add people that I actually am able to engage in interesting dialogue with. And if I don't, and I don't share a common interest, I'm not going to add them. And, I'm really looking forward to the social networking tools that are involved in PS4. So I think, the ability to be able to record video and upload will actually save me a lot more grief than I get now with certain things. Whether it be, how did you earn that trophy, or can you help me out with this, or I have a question about how this game plays, on Facebook, when they see a trophy pop up via PlayStation Network, now I can just show them.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a blessing in
Don't bother me.
disguise.
Here it is.
Yeah, exactly. Go away. Here's a video. Go watch. But
Unfriended.
um, I still maintain that is not something that is wrong with the games industry. I think there's far more pressing issues, and I think people sort of really, if you, okay, I understand that you have a personal opinion about social media, blah blah blah. You may really hate it, but I would say, fine, hate it, but at least give it a try when the new system comes, because you really don't know how
Yeah.
it's going to
Well,
pan out.
I'll do that. That's why I say I'll give it a shot. I'll see what they got, what they come out with, and then I'll really give my opinion. Because if I
Yeah.
don't like it, I won't use it. If I do, I will. Um, I just
And it's
again
not like you're buying
reiterate.
the system, is it? So you're
I,
buying it to play
yeah, I'm buying it
video
to play
games.
games. Yeah, anything extra like that's a bonus. Obviously, I want
Exactly.
some great graphics and stuff like that. But it's all going
I
to come
don't
down to
don't make
controls
it.
anyway.
I would say to people, don't make it the reason that you don't buy the system, because that's the wrong way to approach it.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I think if you're going to say to someone, I don't want to buy the system because of the social network tools, what? Really? You bought a system for that? And it would be the same question if somebody said to me, I just want to buy it because there's a new Call of Duty. I'd be saying the same thing. What? You really want to buy it just for that?
Yeah.
So, but
Well, people buy things for all different reasons.
yeah, just make sure they're the right ones. Sorry, feel like I'm a bit on my soapbox then, but there is fair points to make though. I think
Yeah.
there's a
Well, I look to
well,
the day. I think social media has got its place in the world. I really do. But I would like to see it pull more of those. Pull different languages together. If you develop something where you had language translators built in, just imagine. How you could bridge gaps and stuff. The problem with a lot of these
we
countries
could
that
teach
are
everyone
closed off,
just teach everyone to speak English. Would that not be easier?
that would. Um, and you could probably do that if you put it in games, because all the
Yeah.
kids in the world would probably play English versions of games if that was all that was available. You could
I,
talk about
I,
forcing language onto them.
I remember a Dutch person telling me he learned more English from Grand Theft
Yeah, it's
Auto and
true.
me speaking to him on PSN than he learned in
I've heard
actually
that a
doing
couple
English
times.
class. So something to be said with that.
Of course, what are they learning? They're learning words from games that might not be.
Yeah. But at least it means if they're ever going to use them, at least they get the pronunciation right.
The first words they learn: kill, shoot, destroy, bomb.
Yeah,
All that.
swear words.
Swear word. But no, I mean I'd see it as a good thing, because like countries that are closed off like China with their internet and stuff like that, they develop their own internal things anyway, and that's not good. I mean they've got their head in the sand as to what the rest of the world's doing, and that's, you know, billion
So
people.
I was just going to say,
Not to
sorry,
mention the
because
market there.
I'm aware of time issues here, but we started this off with you asking me what I thought was wrong with the game industry, but we never actually asked you, what do you think is wrong with the game industry as a whole? Because we
uh,
rambled on a bit about social media, and I think it's safe to say that, we don't think social media is something wrong with the industry. We think it's obviously a positive, even if people don't see it as that. But I'm curious as to think what, besides the whole protesting thing, what you actually genuinely think is part of the problem with some of the things that are wrong with the games industry as a whole.
well, I think it's, I think those regional things, the divides and the splits, and I think the take on it, the general view of the public of gamers, what gamers are, what they're about. Um, these fallacies about, preventing people from playing them or seeing them and things like that to an extent where they're controlled more than what I see as
Do you
violence on
think?
television and porn, and
Do you,
the way it's just, it's got this stigma on it and these systems in place already. I see as the biggest problem.
do you think?
Regionalization.
Do you think, in terms of people's stigma regarding gamers and what they're all about, where does the responsibility lie to change, people's opinions and expectations and stereotypical views of what gamers are about? Do you think that lies with the gamers, or the publishers, or does everyone need to work together to kind of say that
Well,
it's
I think
okay to
I look at the
go and be a
internet.
gamer?
I look at the internet. The internet's kind of like kind of a free zone where, it's kind of opened up for people in the world with computer access to get the kind of things that they want to get real information. So I almost think there shouldn't be a lot of restrictions on that kind of stuff. And when you look at gaming going into the realm of being like that, being available like that, being able to digitally download it and play it online, connectivity with people all over the world, that's kind of out of control for, a region like the United States to say what should be in it or shouldn't be in it. I think that it kind of precludes any kind of rating systems or anything being placed upon it. I think that, you know they have to take this worldview of things. In other words, if you want to control stuff like that that's kind of available on the internet or available on a system, then make it so you have local controls. Put it in the parents' hands. Like if I can get on and set my PS3 to, like, let's make it so it can't get online and do certain things. Like have it kind of have rating restrictions built into it, so that me as a parent, I can control that and I can set that if I choose to. Not, not control it for a region and say, well, Australia's not mature, the kids aren't mature enough to have this level of rated games, so we can't sell them here. That to me is just, it's absurd. Um, and it's preventative, and it's restrictive on a medium that's, far less damaging and stuff that I see than other media. I mean, you can turn on the news, and we were watching things from the bombings and stuff like that, where, there's blood and guts and stuff and everything like that on TV, and you're just kind of like, you can show that, a real event, something that's shocking and brings everyone down, and a kid can be watching that, but he can't play a cartoon version of a video game that's fun, that's, he's driving a tank, and he's blowing up cartoon whatever, and those they're never going to get their hands on a tank. They know the difference there.
Yeah.
One's real and shocking and true gore, and the other is a form of blowing off steam. It's entertainment. It's you know. So I think there, if we were to open up the internet more, make it make it so it's, restrictions should happen on a local level with a parent if they choose to do that. Put it in their hands. They're the ones that are responsible for raising a kid. They're the ones that, if they have an attitude they don't want their kids seeing that, they can control that and turn it off. Don't push it on the whole world. Don't push it on a certain region. and say we have different standards because that doesn't seem to fly. And I think that's the biggest problem.
Well, I was waiting for you to finish your point there and get your message across because I think you completely dodged my question altogether. But I didn't want to say so in the middle of you sort of like making your message clear. So no, my question, which was to you because you brought up about people's perceptions of what a gamer is and what's around that. And what I was saying to you is, where do you think the responsibility lies to change people's, views in some respect on that? Is that down to us as gamers to actually, you know, go out there and sort of say, we're proud to be gamers, this is what we do, there's lots of different things incorporated around that, or, do you think that's down to the publishers and developers to sort of say, gamers are cool people, we love them, blah, blah, blah. Or do you think it's a combination of both that, gamers really should be doing more
I
to
think
sort of say, this is our medium, this is what we enjoy, this is what a gamer should be all about, and, don't stereotype us or,
well, it's a combo. It's a combo. Yeah, I think it's like Sony probably has more power than anyone. Someone like a Sony or Microsoft can step out there and say, look, we're under all these restrictions. You're talking about I mean, they should push that agenda forward. I think that they, as in terms of a worldwide audience, they would reach that more.
yeah, well,
Um,
we said before that Kevin Butler's done, maybe marketing for the wrong reasons, but and mixed marketing messages there. But we said the Kevin Butler adverts did great to get gamers sort of be proud to be gamers in some respect. But did it really get the message of what to those uninitiated what gamers are all about?
yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think if they were to take it up and then they were to ask gamers to kind of be on their side if some big hurdle or issue came up, I think the power of that would be awesome. If Sony has picture it, they have a forum right there where you know not that they would get into some political thing or whatever, but they have a forum there where they can project the messages and stuff across the PlayStation Network. Um, I could almost see like if they kind of like had took on a cause to spread gaming around the world to make the internet more open, that they could get a lot of support, and they could probably do it very easily. And I think that whether it's social media like a Facebook or a Sony or a Microsoft or somebody taking up that kind of fight, I think they could do it. I really do.
Well, just a thought then, maybe for next week, maybe what we should do is a combination of two things, which is where maybe next week we should explore exactly what a gamer actually is. Look at some of the variations of gamers from hardcore to core to casual, or even what they mean, and tie that into something else that we were looking at, which is obviously the esports side of things as well. So maybe we could do those two things next week.
Perhaps, yeah.
Do our bit to kind of educate people on exactly what a gamer is and explore some of the issues around that.
Mhm.
That'd be
Mhm.
pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's topic set for next week. For once, we
Alrighty.
haven't done that for a while, have we?
No, we got anything
normally it
else for
gets to
today?
normally it gets towards the end of the show. We're like, what are we going to do next week?
So what did we learn today? We learned that I'm anti-social with social media.
To other people.
So when everyone gets deleted from my friends list and everything else, Dante is
Do
the
not blame
cause.
me. You
Talk to
cannot
him.
blame me. It's just because Katie thinks you smell and don't like you.
That's right. Yeah, you smell funny across the PlayStation Network. Don't want you on my friends list.
But yeah, I think we realised, over the course of the show that social media is a positive. Give it a stab. Make sure you actually use it properly, rather than just going, oh, I've got 500 status updates. I don't care. Go away.
Well, you know what? When we get to it, you should probably put something in there about how to use that social media. You take the PlayStation 4, learn how to use it, and then we should probably have, you know,
Have we got room in the budget for me to get a custom one?
sure. But
Yeah,
no,
I get a
let's
free PS4.
let's consider that as a learning opportunity, much like you do with the Vita, because there's a lot of questions about it. I think that this will be another one that'll have a lot of questions about it. So, just thinking ahead, you probably would benefit people to answer their questions about social media when it gets to that point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm not.
Complicated topic at
Yeah,
times.
yeah.
But
So,
alrighty.
what else did we learn? We learned that some of the biggest problems are the big players, i.e., Call of Duty, squishing talent because nobody
Yep.
cares.
That's that whole indie game debate, and do they have room in the marketplace? Which it could be another topic that.
Yeah. We learned obviously violence you know, isn't really an issue, although that's still yet to be conclusive. Um, but maybe the responsibility lies with parents. We
Maybe.
should do more with that. Um, what else did we learn?
Oh, what did we learn?
That we don't know exactly what a gamer is classified as, and maybe we're gonna explore that next week. So
Yep. So we don't have all the answers of what's wrong with gaming and where it can go, but I sure would like to. I sure would like to see some drastic changes, and I hope that we're done with the whole protest thing against video gamers, because every time that comes up, I think it gives the wrong impressions for those that don't game on what a gamer's really about, and that's sad. Um,
yeah, I
if
mean we're not going to solve all the problems in 2 hours, but what I would certainly say is that if you guys listening in via the recap or live, do share with us what you think's wrong with the gaming industry, and I don't mean like you know the obvious as we pointed out some of them, but some things that really are personal to you that you think is wrong with the overall side of it, and please don't get bogged down in the whole social media debate. We'll address that another time, but do let us know what you think is really wrong with the industry, because I'm curious to see what other people think. Because as I say, 2 hours is nowhere near enough for us to go through every possible avenue of everything that's wrong. We've sort of picked up on the obvious ones, if you like, but there are obviously going to be other issues that are quite flippantly wrong with the industry.
yes, indeed,
So do share
do share.
if if you're feeling social enough.
Alrighty,
Sorry, I
folks.
couldn't resist sliding that in. I do
Yeah.
apologise.
Alrighty, our social friends out there. I'll try to be more social in the future. But thank you for the discussion today, Dante. And
That's no
look
problem
forward
at all.
to seeing everybody next week. I hope you enjoyed our topic. And, please, as always, put your opinion in there. We'd love to hear it.
Definitely.
Until next week, thank you for joining us, Trophies on PSN's The PodStation. And have a great day. Bye-bye.